Should everyone have a nicely manicured green grass lawn? What's wrong with it? And did people always have these lawns?
To me, that's wild because I remember my cousin's lawn we used to visit in Plainview, Long Island. And we were city kids, so we never had lawns. Had growing up in the projects and coming out of there. And so it was like great. We got to play on his lawn. And he's always, no, stay off my lawn. I want to keep it green and lush like this. And good thing we stayed off of it because he used Scott's turf builder or whatever it was called back then. And poison kills dandelions. I mean, who cares if there are dandelions growing in a lawn? Like, that's pretty. Yellow dandelions, dandelion tea is great for your liver. You know, what are they thinking? But it became a suburban part of moving to suburbia. It became part and parcel of what that meant. Having a lawn is reinforced by the local districts that you can't have other things on your lawn. You can't. When I rented a house later in Port Jeff Station, Long Island, and we just dug up the lawn and we planted crops, and all hell broke loose. We thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Wow, we never did this before. We're again city boys now. We're being farmers, and this is fun. And neighbors didn't like it. The landlord definitely didn't like it. Fought to evict us. Eventually succeeded. But so what's a lawn? So there's some quotes in the book from New York Times article and others about what is a lawn? What is the history of the lawn? And that's all, it's interesting because we take for granted that this is how something should look. Why? Because it was like that in playing polo, is where it's from, in England, under the king in the Middle Ages. They had these lawns that took a lot to keep neat and manicured so that they could play polo on it. And that's where this comes from. And here we are copying that as our model, reducing it in size, of course, and seeing it as something that's good or healthy. Why? So we have to, the purpose of the book is to rethink some of the things that we take for granted and we never think to question. Who would ever question a lawn? Yeah, of course. You have a lawn, you have a picket fence, you have a 2-car garage, you have two kids in your family, and you're set to go. Well, no, it's nuts.
In chapter 13 of your book, The Fight Against Monsanto's Roundup, what did you mean by consequences of glyphosate effects on animal cells, animals, and ecosystems?
It's not only glyphosate, it's Roundup. What's turning out now is that Roundup, which was the tests by Monsanto were only on glyphosate. Didn't know, or they didn't report the other components, which are POEAs, which are surfactants that helps penetrate into the plant further and also into people, doing different biological pathways. And it also has, lo and behold, arsenic. And who knew that? We just found that out a year ago by the Seralini studies in France. Why didn't the EPA and FDA know this before they approved it? Didn't they test it? No. The way it works in the U.S. is no precautionary principle, which there should be, which means that before you could put a chemical on the market and use, you have to prove that it's safe. It doesn't exist here. That's part of the problem. So part of it has to do with your question with the biological pathways that glyphosate is able to penetrate, but also it's the other parts of Roundup as well. And all of that same chapter 13, Robin Falk Esser wrote that, who's a PhD in biology and biophysics, and it's the person who just left. And she wrote that about Monsanto's so-called science that they use to justify using why it's safe. And we went on tour in California talking about it. And she just tore apart the science of it. It's phony science. It's not real. And she went piece by piece through why the excuses and rationalizations that Monsanto is using are just totally garbage. And so I had asked, I'm not a scientist. I could read it, but I can't reproduce what she says in that chapter off the top of my head, because that's not my field. But I certainly can read it, and so could you in the book. It's chapter 13, yeah. So it's quite interesting the way the lies work. And then Stacy Malkin did a whole piece in there also in the book about how the lies work, how they Robin tore it apart, how they work scientifically and why they don't work and what's wrong with them. And Stacy Malkin looked at the way they're used in the world around us to promote Monsanto's products and to diffuse opposition to it and to try and control the opposition, including lying, not only overt lying, but getting their own scientists, suppressing their own scientists' complaints about what they were doing. One scientist, who's no hero at all, she didn't have the guts to come forward really, but she was dragged into court through a memo that was found through the recent trials that are happening, and found that she had actually complained to Monsanto and said, we can't say that it's not a carcinogen because we didn't do the testing on the full product. We only tested the glyphosate, and even that's a problem. But we didn't test it with the arsenic and the POEAs and everything else. So it's quite amazing that they're allowed to get away with this without anybody complaining, except we're complaining, but with governments just allowing it to happen.
Can you summarize in 15 seconds everything we talked about today?
Probably not. Probably not, because it's not only about, will it kill me? Yes, it will. Will it? But it's also about, what do we do? What do we as a movement do to stop it? Do we fight? Are we condemned to fighting one pesticide at a time? So we ban DDT, and then we get organophosphates. We ban organophosphates. We got banned arsenic before that. We banned whatever's coming up next. We may be on the verge of banning glyphosate, and they already have dicamba out there. So when we're on this pesticide treadmill, and that we have to not only get off the treadmill, but bust up the gears of that treadmill so that it's just collapses and that we no longer have to face this situation. And that's what the book is about, actually, how to do that, why to do that, and ways in which people are doing that around the world. So I'm very excited, especially people in Africa and Latin America are leading the way on this. We don't normally think about that here in the United States, but they're on the front edge of this way more than even the United States, which is pesticided and Roundup ready corn and soy are everywhere. But in other countries, people are being dispossessed from their lands. They're being poisoned. Their water supplies are being poisoned. And this is something that we have to care about. We can't only care about ourselves. Yes, we need to care about ourselves. We have to care about other people and the uses to which our so-called science is being used in the interest of empire. And we have to smash the empire.
Why did you feel it was important to come speak here at the Real Truth About Health conference?
Well, this is exciting. I didn't know about this conference at all. Steve Shore invited me, and I was looking up and I saw that Vandana Shiva spoke in the past, and that we toured with Vandana Shiva earlier this year. So going up through Vermont and New England and talking at different places. And that was a big selling point of the conference, that we heard some of the people who had been here I was really worried that I didn't know what it was, and all these people got hung up going to speak at conferences that later turned out to be sponsored by some arch right-wing group or the Ku Klux Klan or so I was worried about that. And then I talked to Steve, and he assured me that that wasn't what this was about at all, which was good to know. And I worried because on Long Island, I know this is not originating on Long Island, but I didn't know that at the time, but Ronkonkoma and Yaphank years ago used to be the headquarters of the the Nazis actually in the U.S. and also the Ku Klux Klan on Long Island. Nobody knows. I was in jail out in Yaphank and Riverhead, and that history was still evident even when I was in jail there. But it used to be, the actual headquarters, the physical headquarters with the big swastika flag flying on it in Yaphank. So I was worried about that. But when I came here and I saw that this is, no, I'm just being a paranoid nut, and then, so I checked it out further, and people were so generous, and it's such a great conference. Our panel last night was the best panel I was on it, but the other speakers, I was fascinated by what everybody was talking about. It was just great. So I appreciated the opportunity. And it's just, it's great meeting people. Free food also. It's like the food has been excellent, just excellent. I think it needs more greens, but it's still excellent. And so I much thank everybody for it. I'm feeling very grateful for the opportunities that have opened up to me here and also in general in my life. I don't, Steve introduced me as someone who struggled, who sacrificed so much to be this and that. It was very generous, but I don't feel that way. I feel it's joyful. I feel it's an opportunity to fight back. I don't know, maybe it's the way I was brought up. To hell with them, hell with the bastards. Let's organize and take them down, and that's fun.
If somebody wants to learn more about your work, where should they go?
They could go to a couple of places. One is www.nospray.org. That's for the No Spray Coalition work. And a lot of links between. Or you could go to the book. The website for the book is called thepoliticsofpesticides.com. www.thepoliticsofpesticides.com. And that's a good place to learn more about it as well. And, I also am a poet, and I write poetry. I sell my poetry on the streets. I have several books out and about 10,000 pamphlets on various topics. So, so you could go to my website to find more about that, which is my name, Mitchel Cohen, www.mitchelcohen, one L in Mitchell, .com. And you can find out more about all sorts of things there. Thank you all.